The bones of a house passed down with stories etched into the walls, the scent of lemon polish and lavender, the quiet assurance that someone trusted you to carry on what mattered. For years, I believed I was that person. I was the granddaughter who stayed, the one who helped rebuild after the storm, who planted azaleas by season, who spent 2 summers redrawing every window by Evelyn, the woman who raised me, mentored me, and trusted me with her final design. Then she passed, and within weeks, my mother and cousin changed the laws, erased my name from the mailbox, and told the neighbors I moved away from home. I didn't, and I wasn't done. What they didn't expect was the envelope Evelyn left behind, or the trust I formed, or the voice recorder buried in the safe beneath the limestone. A blueprint of truth, too powerful to ignore. Before I show you how a locked door became a courtroom, and how I reclaimed a legacy brick by brick, drop a comment below if your family ever tried to write you out of your own story. Hit like and subscribe if you believe some truths are too strong to silence. For a moment, I stood there frozen, staring at the weathered wood grain of the front door, the faint reek of dried eucalyptus now partially torn. The echo of the slam still rang in my ears, louder than the birds chirping in the oak trees above. My suitcase tilted on its wheels behind me, one of them catching in a crack on the cobblestone path we used to race bikes across. This was my home, or it had been. The azalea bushes by the porch had bloomed early this year. Grandmother Evelyn and I planted them in summer. I could still feel the dirt under my nails, her sun-spotted hands guiding mine as we mapped out the colors by the month. I'd helped design the sunroom too, and pick the curtains in the library after that storm shattered the west windows. It wasn't just bricks and paint. It was mine. Ours. Now Savannah had shut me out like I was a trespasser. I knocked again, this time harder. Savannah, what's going on? I live here. My name's on the... The door didn't open. Nothing stirred. I reached for the handle, turned it. Locked. A sound behind me made me flinch. Camille? I turned to see Doris Calhoun peering at me from across the yard, her small frame wrapped in a floral housecoat. She looked both hesitant and concerned, her eyes darting from the locked door to my face. Her curly light hair bobbed slightly as she approached. I was wondering when you'd be back, she said softly, hands wringing the edges of her robe. I didn't think they'd really... do it. Do what? My voice cracked, raw from the effort of keeping it level. She hesitated. That woman. Your mother. Elaine? She had a man here 2 weeks ago. Looked like a real estate guy, clipboard and all. 2 days later, a moving truck showed up. A young couple moved into the guest wing. I thought maybe you'd rented it out. My jaw tensed. No, I didn't rent anything. I didn't approve anything. She said you'd gone to New York for good, that you were no longer part of the... arrangement. I blinked. Arrangement? She lowered her voice. Camille, I hate to be the one to say this, but your name's not on anything anymore. That man, he bought papers. Legal ones. I saw her sign them. I took a step back. The edges of my vision buzzed with disbelief. But that's impossible, I murmured. Grandmother made it clear. This house was to stay in my name. She wrote it into the trust. Doris just looked at me with pity. I couldn't breathe. I wheeled my suitcase down the driveway, ignoring the crack in the handle that dug into my palm. I needed to see for myself. The back gate had always stuck, and this time was no different. I gave it a firm shove and it finally creaked open. My heels clicked along the stone path toward the sunroom, the one I'd poured my savings into fixing 3 years ago. My hands were shaking as I slipped around to the side entrance where the old dog door had never been properly sealed. I crawled through like a thief. Inside, the house smelled like lemon polish and something sharper, maybe bleach. Everything felt wrong, cold. Not just because someone had turned the thermostat down, but because the soul of the place was missing. I crept upstairs. My room was destroyed. The gallery wall I designed was empty. Only faint outlines left by the frames of bed. The bed was stripped bare, the mattress missing entirely. My dresser was gone. The walk-in closet was clean, except for a lone wire hanger swinging on the rod. I stumbled to the desk drawer, heart pounding. Empty. A knot formed in my stomach as I turned around and stared at the hollow space that used to hold my life. Every sketchbook, every journal, gone. Only a trash bag sat in the corner, half open, revealing ripped fabric from a dress I'd designed in college, one my grandmother had praised with teary eyes. I crouched down, pressing a hand to my mouth to keep from screaming. They'd donated everything, every piece of who I was. Gone. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new email. Subject: regarding Evelyn Hartley's estate sender. Grant Whitaker body. Camille, I'm contacting you on behalf of your grandmother's estate. We need to talk. Privately. My thumb hovered over the screen, then slowly tapped reply. Your grandmother left behind instructions, and you're at the center. The words hung in the air like the dust floating through the amber light of grandmother's office. I sat stiffly across from him, the leather armchair swallowing me up in its gold grandeur. Books lined every wall, heavy volumes with gold lettering, their spines worn from decades of use. A grandfather clock ticked in the corner, steady and ancient, like the room itself had been waiting for this moment. Grant opened a drawer and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He placed it gently on the desk between us. I didn't think I'd be seeing you like this, Camille, he said, adjusting his glasses. But your grandmother was clear. If things went badly, I was to contact you immediately. I reached for the envelope with trembling hands. The seal had already been broken. Inside was a copy of the trust document. My name is there, in gold, in ink, in Evelyn Hartley's deliberate handwriting. It named me as the sole heir to the Hartley residence and all its contents, plus a separate clause outlining an investment account tied to a property holding in Charlotte. I blinked. This isn't possible, I whispered. Savannah and Elaine said, they didn't sign. Grant cut in calmly. That's the problem. Your grandmother structured the trust to require their acknowledgement for the full execution. She believed it would protect the family from internal disputes. He paused, then leaned forward. But she didn't anticipate how quickly they'd turn on you. The trust shimmered slightly under the desk lamp's glow. Evelyn's signature was right where it should be, and beside it, blank lines for Savannah Hartley and Elaine Hartley. Left-hand. She filed it with the registrar, but the document was never finalized because Savannah and Elaine refused to sign after Evelyn's threat. Without their signatures, the transfer of title was stalled. Legally murky, ethically rotten. I swallowed hard, the edges of the paper curling in my grip. She knew, I murmured. She saw this coming. Grant reached for another envelope, thinner and sealed with violet wax. He offered it to me with both hands. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Grandmother. I broke the seal slowly. Inside was a single sheet of thick cream-colored paper, her personal stationery. The lines were penned in a sharp, elegant script, steadier than I remembered toward the end. My Camille, if you're reading this, it means they did what I feared. You must understand. They will not stop at cruelty. They will rewrite you out of everything unless you refuse to vanish. Design is power. Use it. You know the walls of this house better than they do. That's why I left you the plans, because legacy isn't about blood. It's about blueprint. Be brave. Be brilliant. And for God's sake, don't let them sell what I built. Evelyn, tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I traced the bottom line of her signature with my fingertip, as if it would warm under my touch. Grant was quiet, giving me space. She left a detailed architectural layout, he said gently, marked with notes, and a ledger tucked into the margin. Her annotation showed exactly what was paid from her personal account versus family fund. It's compelling. Very compelling. A long silence passed between us. Outside the window, the sky had darkened to slate, the city below starting to glow with headlights and amber street lamps. I finally looked up. Can we fight this? Grant's eyes met mine, steady and unreadable. If you're ready to fight smart. It's just a house, Camille. You don't belong there anymore. Savannah's words landed like a slap, even though she said them without raising her voice. We sat across from each other at a corner table in the dim, too-cold coffee shop on Chestnut Avenue. The air smelled like scorched espresso and bleach, the kind of place people came to argue, not to connect. Elaine stirred her tea slowly, her eyes never quite meeting mine. Savannah's cappuccino sat untouched, the foam slowly sinking. I had come in calm. I had practiced what I would say. But now, with them sitting here, so self-assured, so cleanly divorced from everything that hurt, I felt like I was speaking from underwater. I want to hear it from you, I said, keeping my voice steady. Why lock me out? Why now? Why erase me from a house I helped rebuild? Savannah leaned back, arms folded. Because Evelyn wasn't thinking straight when she signed those papers. You know that. She was sick. That's not what her doctor said. Or Grant Whitaker. I counted. She left instructions. She was lucid. Sharp even. Savannah gave a quick laugh. No joy in it. Just venom. Grant. That fossil would say anything if it means keeping his name on a few trust documents. Elaine cleared her throat. It's complicated, Camille. You weren't around. We did what's best for the family. You donated my clothes to charity, I said. You tore down my bedroom wall. We renovated. Savannah snapped. It's not your room anymore. You've been gone for years, Camille. Evelyn barely saw you. That's not true, I shot back. She asked for me when she had the seizure. You didn't call. You didn't even tell me until she was in hospice. Elaine finally looked up, her face pale, thin lips pressed into a line, but she said nothing. Savannah, as always, didn't flinch. She was confused. She thought she saw people that weren't there. She talked to you like you were still a little girl playing architect in the backyard. It didn't mean anything. I sat back in my chair, stunned at the ease with which she twisted everything. We redesigned that house together, I whispered. That was her legacy. And mine. You know it. Savannah leaned forward now, eyes glittering. Legacy. Camille, you were a pet famous. She liked having someone who listened to her old stories. That doesn't mean she wanted you in charge of the estate. You're lying. She didn't want the family torn apart, but you always made it about you. Savannah's voice dropped to a near whisper. Don't contact us again. You've always been the outsider. Elaine stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. We're done here. They walked out together. No goodbye, no hesitation. I remained frozen in grief, the sweat pooling on my back despite the chill. I watched the last bit of cream in my coffee swirl slowly, turning to nothing. Outside, the sun was setting behind a row of brick houses, gold bleeding on the slope. I took out my phone, ready to call Grant, to say I'd tried, that it was hopeless. But as I unlocked the screen, a new email slid into my inbox. Subject: Evelyn Hartley Estate. From undisclosed@securemail.com. Body: You may want to talk to Caleb Morse. He knows more than he admits. I stared at the name. Caleb, the contractor who handled Evelyn's last renovation. The man Savannah called just a handyman. But my grandmother trusted him, and he wasn't just a handyman. You didn't hear it from me, Caleb said, but I've seen the statements. His voice was low, barely above a whisper, though the room was sealed, private, and quiet enough to hear the hum of the ceiling fan. I hadn't seen him in over a year. Not since the wake, where he stood at the edge of the crowd like someone invited out of obligation but never really included. And even now, sitting across from him in his office off Beechwood Avenue, his posture was cautious. Arms folded, eyes scanning the blinds behind me as if afraid someone might be listening. I stared at the file he'd just moved across the desk toward me. What am I looking at? I asked. But I already knew. My stomach had dropped the moment I saw Evelyn's name at the top of the page. Bank statements, Caleb said. The fund in her name. Transfers made just weeks before she died. I flipped through, pulse racing. One stood out. $72,400 wired to a personal account listed under Elaine Hartley. The description line read simply, "Home improvements." I looked up. This wasn't authorized. He nodded once. Evelyn told me only you and she had rights to access the trust for that project. That money wasn't supposed to leave until the renovation phase passed final inspection, which it never did. My hands shook. Elaine used trust money before Evelyn passed? She did. He paused. But that's not the worst of it. Caleb opened a drawer and pulled out a thin, cream-colored folder. His fingers brushed the edge of the cover almost reverently before he placed it in front of me. Inside were photocopies of the original house plans, my house plans, the ones Evelyn and I spent 2 summers sketching on the finance, the ones we filed with the trust. They're gone now, Caleb said. Savannah had them removed from the bank safe the week after the funeral. Told the bank manager she was consolidating records. My mouth was dry. Is that even legal? Not without the primary beneficiary's consent, which, last I checked, was still you. I stared at the blue ink sketches. Each line had a story. The sunroom I begged for, the hidden shelf Evelyn insisted on for her journals, the widened staircase she said would keep the family moving forward. They weren't just blueprints. They were memory, intention, love, and now they were missing from the official record. She's erasing me, I said aloud. Caleb didn't argue. We sat in silence for a moment. I watched him, wondering why he was helping me now, after all this time. Why tell me this? He hesitated. Because Evelyn trusted you, and because I saw what they did after she passed. I should have spoken sooner, but they're my cousins too. I kept thinking someone else would stop them. I slid the file back into its envelope. My hands were steadier now. You're going after them? He asked. I didn't answer. He exhaled. If you're going to move, do it soon. They're planning to sell the house. I overheard Savannah on the phone. She's meeting a buyer next week. My breath caught. Next week. They were really doing it. Tearing down everything Evelyn and I built. Not just the structure, but the story. The truth. I stood, gripping the file tightly. Thank you, Caleb. He didn't smile, just gave a single nod, eyes dim with something I couldn't name. Regret, maybe. But I had no time to feel sorry for him. Because now I had the first piece of proof. And I wasn't going to let them bury it. If they think I'm going to fade away, they clearly forgot who raised me. I said it aloud to the empty apartment, letting the words hang like scaffolding in midair. The rented unit smelled of fresh paint and lemon floor cleaner, sterile and blank. A far cry from Evelyn's warm, lived-in home. But it would do. For now, it would be my world. I cleared the dining table of its generic decor, a bowl of baked lettuce in the plastic basement, and spread out the blueprints Caleb gave me. The sketches Evelyn
Bây giờ làm
made,
chân này đéo biết nó bể lúc nào.
curved lines,
Bể
bold
chưa đến tiền nó đã bể.
angles, notations in her handwriting, natural light here. Camille's idea, test insulation, leave room to breathe. Beside the blueprints, I laid out the trust document Grant had given me, then the bank statements, then Evelyn's letter. I taped them onto the bare white walls, aligning them like puzzle pieces. I scribbled notes onto sticky pads, dates, quotes, anomalies. Everything Savannah and Elaine wanted to erase, I made visible. My laptop chimed with a new email. A reply from Grant. Confirmed. Ready to proceed. Call when you're in position.
Em mua là em phải mua
Don't
cái đùi
delay.
heo. Mua
GW.
hai con gà.
I reached for my phone, heart steady for the first time in days. He picked up after 1 minute. Let's go to peace. There was a pause, and then his low voice came through. I've already drafted a request for full release of estate records from Elaine's attorney. If they refuse, we can petition the court. Do it. After we hung up, I opened an old video file, one I hadn't watched since the summer before Evelyn fell ill. She sat on the back porch, hair pinned up, legs tucked beneath her as she held a sketchbook in her lap. Sometimes, she said to the camera, the best blueprint is one no one knows you have. That's how you hold on to power. Quietly, decisively. She looked into the lens, smiling. Design isn't just about walls. It's about knowing what holds them together. I closed the video and leaned back in the chair, staring at the map of my case, now blooming across the apartment like a mural of truth. I grabbed a fresh notebook, labeling it the Hartley case, and began logging everything: timestamps of documents, contact names, missing items. There was still so much to do. I needed affidavits, witness lists, maybe a forensic accountant. But for the first time, I wasn't done. I was drafting a contract. Later that evening, after filing a formal request for inheritance disclosure through Grant, I opened the application portal for the Asheville Design Exhibition, an annual showcase where local designers unveiled personal projects. I typed, project title, Evelyn Concept Statement, a study of legacy, blueprint, and reclamation, through the lens of memory and structure. Submitting it felt like sealing the foundation of a new build. I stepped back and studied the cluster of documents on the wall. Everything had a place now, except one yellowed piece of paper that had slipped behind the blueprint stack. It was Evelyn's last note, the one I thought I'd already read to the bone. But when I turned it over, something faint came to light. A line of ink, nearly erased by time. Check the safe. I blinked. What safe? There had never been mention of one in the official records. Evelyn wasn't the type to hoard valuables. Unless it wasn't about valuables. Unless it was about something they were never supposed to find. The moment I turned the key, I knew Evelyn never truly trusted any of them. The lock clicked softly, too soft for how heavy the iron door looked. A chill rose from the stone floor beneath my feet, curling up my legs like ivy. The old wine cellar smelled of mildew and forgotten stories. Dust motes spun in the flashlight beam as I stepped inside, heart pounding. I'd gotten in through the side entrance, the one Evelyn and I used to sneak through during hot summers when the main house was too loud. The gap in the back door was still there, warped by time and moisture, just wide enough to squeeze through. Savannah had probably never thought to seal it. She never paid attention to the hidden parts of this house. But Evelyn had, and now, so was I. The old blueprint framed roughly together put an odd marking in the bottom corner, a faint circle inside the cellar diagram. I'd always thought it was an oversight. It wasn't. I found the safe tucked behind a crumbling wine rack, embedded into the brick wall and covered with a dusty canvas labeled Cabernet 1989. I brushed the cloth aside and stared at the tarnished metal box. The key Grant had given me, a rusted one Evelyn left behind in an envelope labeled Camille only, slid into the lock without resistance. Inside, there wasn't gold. No heirloom necklace or emergency cash. What there was silenced me. First, a manila envelope marked trust.
Đẹp
Finally,
nhất tại vì nắng nó vẫn còn
inside,
quá.
a signed, dated copy of the trust that clearly listed me as the sole
Hơi
heir.
bị xám ấy.
No annotation, no contested clause, just my name, underlined in Evelyn's heavy ink script. The version Savannah claimed never existed. Then, a photograph, printed, time-stamped, with Evelyn's handwriting scribbled beneath. It showed a computer screen displaying a bank transfer. In the corner, a post-it note read, "They changed it. This is the original." My throat tightened. At the bottom of the safe, wrapped in velvet, was a small handheld recorder. I pressed play. Evelyn's voice filled the room. "If you're listening to this, Camille, it means they did what I feared. They couldn't control your
Trời này là trời đẹp nhất này.
ideas, so they tried to erase you. But people lie. Blueprints don't. This house knows the truth. And so do I." Her voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but emotion. "You always saw the bones of this place, the soul of it. That's why I chose you. Not for blood, but for vision. If they ever try to erase you, this will speak for you." I sank to the floor, the recorder still humming in my hand. Tears spilled without warning. Not from sadness, not anymore, but from the overwhelming clarity that Evelyn had seen this coming. She had built a vault of truth and handed me the key. Literally. She'd known Savannah, known Elaine, known the sickness that power bred in people who never earned it. And still, she had chosen to believe I'd be strong enough to fight. I wiped my face on my sleeve, breath trembling. Then I pulled out my phone and opened a message to Grant. Attached the audio file, typed only one sentence. Time to use her voice. And pressed send. "To whom it may concern, we are filing a preliminary claim of inheritance fraud." Grant's voice was steady as he read the opening line aloud. I sat across from him in his office, the morning sun cutting sharp lines across the oak-paneled walls, casting long shadows that made everything feel heavier. On the table between us sat a thick stack of documents, the first volley in a war we didn't start, but damn sure intended to finish. Grant slid the envelope into a courier pouch marked Priority. Beside him, his paralegal typed furiously, attaching digital versions to scheduled emails. One would go to Elaine's attorney, one to the Buncombe County Probate Court, one to the Department of Real Estate Affairs, and one addressed directly to Savannah Hartley. We weren't hiding anymore. "We're demanding a full freeze on all property transfers under the Evelyn Foundation until the matter is settled," Grant said. "This should buy us a few weeks at least, unless they panic." "They'll panic," I muttered. "She's too used to getting what she wants." He didn't disagree. As he handed the courier pouch to his assistant, I looked around the room. It reminded me of Evelyn's reading nook. Warm woods, quiet authority. She would have loved the subtle rebellion in sending truth through formal channels. "Once you shake the foundation," she used to say, "the walls tremble fast." The message had barely been delivered when the tremors began. An hour later, Grant's secretary rushed in, waving her phone. "You'll want to see this." On Savannah's public Twitter account, pinned for all the world to see. "Sad to see certain people exploit family grief for profit. Evelyn was unwell. This is nothing but greed." The comments were a mix of sympathy and venom. Some praised Savannah's strength, others demanded receipts. I stared at the screen, my heart a storm. Greed? I had lived in Evelyn's shadow by choice, out of love, not gain. But Savannah knew how to twist narrative. She had always played victim when her control slipped. Grant frowned. "We'll stay ahead of it. Let the filings speak." "They won't care," I said quietly. "They only care who's louder." But I hadn't come this far to get distracted. That afternoon, I returned to my apartment to organize the next wave. Affidavits from Doris, scanned letters from Evelyn, the audio file. The walls were covered now in paper, like battle plans from a general without an army. Still, I moved forward, until my banking app buzzed. Account frozen. A red notification flashed. Protective order pending, please contact legal counsel. I stared at it for a full minute before calling Grant. They froze my account, I said. Elaine filed something. He cursed under his breath. They're escalating, trying to pin financial instability on you. Can they do that? Temporarily, it'll be reversed. But, Camille. His voice dropped. They're using Evelyn's mental health as their defense, he said. That she was confused. That she couldn't have made sound decisions when naming you heir. It's about to get uglier. I closed my eyes. They were turning her legacy into a weapon. But they didn't know I had her voice, her words, her intention, signed in ink and spoken into the bones of this fight. They wanted a war? They had one now. She manipulated an old woman for money. It's disgusting. That line hit like a slap. It was posted anonymously on a local design forum I used to frequent, a place filled with artists, architects, and project leads I once considered peers. The post was written with just enough faux compassion to sting harder. The comments poured in, each one a dagger. This is why you don't mix family with business. She's using a dead woman's name for a brand? Gross. Inheritance vultures are always the loudest. Evelyn had warned me once, long ago, as we watched a political scandal unfold on the TV. When truth threatens power, they call you crazy. I hadn't fully understood it then. But now I could feel it in my blood. Grant called within the hour. They're going scorched earth, he said grimly. Social, blogs, whispers in the design scene, all timed, coordinated. They don't care what's true, I murmured, reading yet another email from a former investor. After recent developments, we feel it's best to pause our collaboration. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from fury. Evelyn had built her name on trust and taste, and I had followed in that mold. Now, Savannah was dragging both through the mud. Then came a message from Caleb. The anonymous post was written by Harper Grant. She's a freelance journalist, Savannah's friend from undergrad. This wasn't random. No, it wasn't. It was war. The next day, one of Evelyn's former media consultants, an older woman named Petra who'd managed her estate's online presence, reached out to me via DM. Camille, I've been watching what they're doing to you. I still have access to Evelyn's accounts. If you want help, say the word. I paused before replying. Then, I want to tell the truth, but on my terms. That same night, I reached out to Aria Green, one of my closest friends and the host of a widely followed podcast called Linework, focused on design and ethics. She answered on the first ring. Camille, I need to talk, I said. Not for sympathy, for truth. 2 days later, we recorded an episode. It was raw, unscripted. I spoke about Evelyn, about how we rebuilt the house together, how she mentored me not just in design, but in strength, about the trust, the safe, the forged documents. And finally, at the end of the episode, I played a clip of Evelyn's voice, the one from the recorder. If you're listening to this, Camille, it means they did what I feared. They couldn't control your ideas, so they tried to erase you. We ended the episode in silence. No dramatic music, no credits, just truth. Within hours, Linework exploded. Top 5 trending on Apple Podcasts, Instagram Reels, Reddit threads titled #JusticeForCamille. Former clients quietly reached out, some apologizing, others asking how they could help. I was scrolling through the new messages when my phone rang. No ID. I hesitated, then answered. Savannah's voice slithered through the line, cold and clear. You just made it personal. I didn't respond. Because it had always been personal. She just hadn't realized how ready I was to fight. You don't just rebuild a legacy, you fight for it. The words echoed through the apartment as if Evelyn herself had said them aloud. But it was only me, whispering to a room that had grown smaller, heavier, like a vault with no key. Stacks of documents lay in boxes, half sorted. The bulletin board I once filled with trust fund clauses, signatures, blueprint scans, now bare, pins dangling like broken compass needles. I had been packing for hours, trying to convince myself it was just a pause, that leaving Asheville wasn't surrender, just survival. The silence was unbearable. I hadn't heard from clients. The bank declined my emergency credit request. Unresolved litigation risk, they said. Even the cozy neighborhood coffee shop had stopped replying to my inquiry about their redesign. I had been marked. Not officially. Just deeply enough for the walls to close in. The Evelyn project was on hold. The court hadn't yet responded. The world moved on, and I stood still. Until my phone buzzed. Caleb, I think you should see this. Attached was a video file, unlabeled. No subject line. I hesitated, then tapped. Evelyn appeared on screen, seated in her favorite armchair. Her silver hair pulled back, hands folded gently. The lighting was soft. This was a private interview. A legacy reel, maybe. One I had never seen. People keep talking about legacy like it's a plaque or a scholarship fund, she said. But it's not. It's who you trust when your name no longer protects them. She looked straight at the camera. No hesitation. Camille doesn't just see what things are. She sees what they could be. That's why I chose her. Not because she's perfect, but because she sees value where others see inconvenience. She rebuilds. I didn't realize I was crying until I felt a drop hit the keyboard. Then another. Then I stood. Half-dressed, eyes blurry, I began printing. Page after page. Trust documents, timeline photos, asset transfer records, Evelyn's original signature next to the forged version, the podcast transcript, the deed blueprints, the clip of Evelyn's voice. I wasn't a victim. I was the evidence. 3 hours later, I stood in the Buncombe County Courthouse, file box in hand. The clerk looked startled when I dropped it gently on the counter. Formal suit. Inheritance fraud. Names: Elaine Hartley, Savannah Hartley. He took the file without a word, stamping the top sheet. The sound was final, like a gavel striking bone. By the time I got back to the apartment, Grant was already calling. They just got their summons, he said. Court date, 4 weeks from now. I stood by the window watching the clouds shift. This wasn't about reclaiming a house. This was about defending the woman who taught me how to see possibility. And proving I hadn't been erased. Every signature, every transaction, we pinned them down. I said the words aloud like a prayer, though my hands were shaking with exhaustion. The law office conference room smelled like stale coffee and dry erase markers. And yet, the walls had become sacred. Covered with printouts, yellow sticky notes, red string tracing connections like arteries, timeline, assets, motive, the Evelyn board. Grant stood beside me, sleeves rolled up, eyes trained on a cluster of emails I'd arranged by date. Start from the earliest forgery, he said. Build the narrative from there. July 14th, I answered, pointing to a photocopy. That's when Elaine accessed the safe deposit box. Same day Evelyn was in the hospital. There's no legal proxy authorization. Caleb entered quietly, holding a manila folder. I traced the money flow, he said. Evelyn's design fund account was drained across 3 transfers, all led to a shell LLC, Hartley Consulting. That's Savannah's company, I muttered. Registered the same week as the trust amendment was pulled, Caleb added. I looked at Grant. We have a motive. Theft disguised as caretaking. And we just got a witness, he said, glancing at his phone. Doris Calhoun. Your neighbor. My stomach twisted. She reached out? She said it's time someone told the truth. That afternoon, we met Doris at her home, the same one next door to Evelyn's. She welcomed us in with tea and a trembling voice, her hands folded tight in her lap. I didn't know what to do back then, she said, but it's been eating at me. What did you see? Grant asked gently. She took a long breath. It was late. The lights were off at Evelyn's place except the kitchen. I saw Elaine enter through the back door carrying a folder. An hour later, Savannah arrived and walked out with something under her coat. Papers. What time? I asked. Just after 1 a.m. Grant nodded. Would you be willing to testify? Doris didn't hesitate. I saw Savannah destroy something that night. She fed it into the old fireplace outside. I never saw Evelyn touch that fire pit after her stroke. When we returned to the office, the tension shifted. We weren't just reacting anymore. We were setting the pace. Grant's paralegal called from the hall. The audio's been authenticated. Evelyn's voice, time-stamped and verified. It was happening. Then my phone buzzed. No name. Just a forwarded link. A news brief. Westbrook and Miles law firm takes on Hartley estate defense. I stared at the screen. My throat clenched. Savannah had just hired one of the most ruthless defense firms in the Southeast. Grant saw my face. They don't lose, I whispered. He looked me in the eye. Calm. Grounded. Then we make sure they've never fought someone like you. Raise your right hand, Ms. Hartley. The words cut through the courtroom like a blade. My arm lifted, instinctively steady, though my heart thundered in my chest. The oath came next, and I repeated it as if each word weighed bricks on my shoulders. The truth. The whole truth. So help me God. I took my seat at the plaintiff's table. Grant leaned slightly toward me. They'll try to shake you. Just answer clearly. Don't rush. I nodded. The bench felt colder than I expected. The Jefferson County Civil Courtroom was half full, but the air was thick. Reporters in the back rows, scribbling. Whispers danced between the pews like static electricity. Savannah sat directly across from me, pristine in a navy blue suit, her blonde hair pulled back into a severe knot. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She glanced at her phone, then passed it to her attorney, a woman from Westbrook and Miles whose gaze reminded me of a scalpel. Elaine sat beside her, pale, dressed in gray, wringing her hands with exaggerated frailty. Her entire body language read, "I'm just a confused mother." But I remembered Evelyn's voice. "Let them take you to court. The truth needs a stage." Judge Hayworth entered. The room rose. He was older, stern but not unkind. A man used to slicing through drama like tissue paper. This court is now in session. Civil claim number 84,231. Camille Hartley versus Savannah Hartley and Elaine Hartley. Contestation of inheritance trust and accusation of fraudulent amendment. Grant rose. Your Honor, the plaintiff asserts that the original inheritance document, as designed and signed by the late Evelyn Hartley, was deliberately suppressed and fraudulently altered. My client, Camille Hartley, was the intended heir, and we will provide documentation, witness testimony, and authenticated recordings to prove it. Savannah's lawyer stood, her tone calm but calculated. The defense asserts that Evelyn Hartley, while beloved, was not of sound mind at the time the alleged document was composed. Furthermore, we will show that Camille Hartley exerted undue influence on a declining elderly woman and is now manipulating grief into litigation. The judge nodded. Proceed. As the morning unfolded, the facts were laid bare. Or rather, the first layer of them. Caleb's financial documents, the design fund trail, The timeline Grant and I had worked night after night to assemble, but the tension built slowly. Elaine sniffled on cue. Savannah whispered to her lawyer dramatically. Reporters typed faster whenever I spoke. By midday, I was back on the stand. "Ms. Hartley," the opposing counsel said, rising smoothly, "are you aware that Evelyn Hartley had a history of neurological episodes in her final year?" "Yes," I said. "I was the one who took her to the specialist in Raleigh." She blinked, pivoted. "And did you ever suggest to her that she correct the trust in your favor?" "No." "Did she ever say she feared Savannah or Elaine?" "She said she trusted me. That's what mattered." She smiled. A trap. "But isn't it true that you personally benefited from her trust? That you stood to inherit over $1.2 million in assets?" "Yes." "So you had motive." I looked her straight in the eye. Number I had purpose. She stepped back, arms folded. Grant stood again. "Ms. Hartley, in your words, what did your grandmother leave you?" I didn't blink. "She left me her vision, her work, her values. The house was just the container." Gasps rustled through the crowd. Even Judge Hayworth looked briefly moved. Then Savannah stood. Her own attorney whispered, but she shook her head and walked directly to the microphone. "May I address the court?" she asked. "Ms. Hartley, your attorney," the judge began. She overrode him. "I just want to say something simple." Her eyes landed on me, cold, victorious. "Camille stole from our mother when she was confused and vulnerable. She forced her way back into this family by guilt-tripping a dying woman. And now she wants money. Nothing more." Then she turned toward the judge. "We are filing a counterclaim for fraud, document forgery, and undue influence on a mentally unstable elder." My breath caught. Across the table, Grant's mouth tightened. Cliffhanger. The truth was finally on stage, and now, so was the war. "Play the recording." The words echoed through the courtroom like a final command. Judge Hayworth glanced over his glasses, lips tight, nodding once. Grant tapped the remote. For a moment, there was only static. Then the low, crackling warmth of Evelyn Hartley's voice filled the chamber. "If you're hearing this, then I'm no longer here. But I need you to listen." The room shifted. Even Savannah's attorney stilled. Reporters leaned forward. The live stream viewership ticker on the wall screen inched upward in real time. "I've seen the way they look at her," Evelyn said, her voice steadier than memory had preserved. "Like she doesn't belong, like she hasn't earned it. But Camille built this legacy with me." Savannah shifted in her seat, arms crossed but rigid. Elaine looked as though she might faint. "She sees what others miss. She finds the beauty in broken things. That's the eye I trusted. That's the heart I trusted. So I'm leaving it to her. The house, the investment account, the sketches, the story." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "I made copies." Evelyn's voice continued, calm, unwavering. "If they try to erase her, this will speak for me." Then silence. A full beat passed before Judge Hayworth lifted his gavel, pausing just before he struck. "Mr. Whitaker," he said, voice gravelly, "is this recording authenticated?" "Yes, Your Honor." The audio file was time-stamped 3 months prior to Evelyn Hartley's passing. It matches her registered voice print on medical files and financial account authentication. And the medium? A sealed USB inside a fireproof envelope, located in a personal safe under Evelyn Hartley's wine cellar. Chain of custody is documented. The judge nodded once. "Enter it into evidence as Exhibit D." The air buzzed. You could almost feel the shift, the unbalancing. The people in the gallery whispered not in mockery now, but in awe. Grant stepped forward. "To supplement, Your Honor, we also have the original will, handwritten, matching Evelyn's known script, with an analyst's report confirming authenticity. The ink predates the amended documents filed by Savannah Hartley by 3 weeks. He passed it to the bailiff. The judge reviewed it silently, his expression unreadable. Then Doris Calhoun took the stand. The court clerk swore her in. Her hands were steady, her eyes clear. "Mrs. Calhoun," Grant asked, "can you describe what you saw the night Evelyn Hartley passed away?" Doris nodded. "I live next door. That evening, I saw Elaine Hartley and her daughter arrive at the house just after 10. Evelyn had told me she wasn't expecting company. And then? I saw Savannah leave an hour later holding a black folder. Elaine came out shortly after, visibly upset. 2 nights later, Evelyn was gone. You didn't think to say anything?" "I did," she said firmly. "To Camille, the morning after the funeral. But by then, they'd already changed the locks." Savannah's attorney stood. Objection. Speculative at best. Irrelevant at worst. Judge Hayworth didn't blink. Overruled. Continue. Grant turned to me. I pulled out the bank statements. The originals, not the doctored versions Savannah had submitted. Highlighted lines showed irregular transfers just after the date of Evelyn's hospitalization. A pattern. A cover-up. I swallowed the lump in my throat. This isn't just a matter of inheritance. It's a matter of theft. The judge called a short recess. When we reconvened, the courtroom was even more packed. The live stream had gone viral. The defense attorney stood. "Your Honor, the defense requests the court strike the entire audio recording and supplemental testimony on grounds of emotional manipulation. The recording, while moving, cannot replace clarity of legal intent. It is prejudicial and unduly influences the jury." Grant stiffened. "Your Honor, that voice is the voice of intent. There is no greater clarity than Evelyn's own words." Judge Hayworth raised a hand. "I will review this objection and issue a ruling tomorrow." He banged the gavel. "Court is adjourned for today." We stood slowly. Savannah's eyes met mine for the first time since this all began. There was no anger left. Just calculation. The truth had spoken, but they weren't done fighting dirty. "Your Honor, we have new evidence submitted by a surprise source." That sentence had echoed in my head all day like a warning bell, but the moment it became real wasn't in court. It was in Grant's office, long past dusk, when I opened an email marked confidential from a name I didn't recognize. Nathan Alden. Attached was a PDF. I clicked, then stopped breathing. 2 wire transfers. Same account. Post dated 2 weeks after Evelyn's death. Both labeled end-of-life services, estate clearance. But they didn't go to a funeral home. They went directly to a private account registered to Elaine Hartley. I stared at the screen. How is this possible? Grant leaned in beside me. His mouth tightened. It's laundering. They disguised the payout as a funeral cost. Twice, I added, still staring. Grant picked up his phone, typing something rapidly. We need to verify the sender. If it's legitimate, this might blow open the entire fraud narrative. Caleb was already on his way over when Grant's office buzzer rang again. But it wasn't him. A man in his late 50s stepped in, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes heavy from years of looking the other way. He didn't introduce himself, just handed over a sealed envelope. "I don't want money," he said. I knew Evelyn. I can't watch them lie anymore." "Natan?" I asked. He nodded once. "I was Evelyn's accountant for 14 years. She kept meticulous records, even had a private ledger, separate from what she submitted to the trust's board. She didn't trust the people around her. Said the only thing she trusted was paper." Grant took the envelope. "Do you have reason to believe Savannah or Elaine manipulated accounts after Evelyn passed?" Nathan sat across from us. "They used her name on a non-active power of attorney. Backdated. Filed on a Sunday. You know what that means in estate law?" I didn't. Grant did. It's not legally valid. Nathan slid out more pages. And this is the reconciliation. Everything Evelyn had as of the week before her death, and everything missing by the week after. I flipped through the pages. Withdrawals, rerouted investments, 2 accounts shut down. One of them had been under my name. I didn't even know it existed. She was setting up an education foundation, Nathan said softly. In your name, for girls in design programs. I looked away, my throat burning. Would you testify? I asked. His eyes widened. They'd ruin me. Not if you have legal protection, Grant said. Whistleblower protection applies here if you were not involved in executing the fraud, and you weren't. Nathan hesitated, then nodded. This will be the final nail, I whispered. He exhaled. I always wondered if she had someone left. A beat later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. No name. Just, I hope you enjoyed your last paycheck. I turned the screen toward Nathan. He froze. Elaine knows. He didn't speak again for the rest of the night. But in his silence, something shifted. For the first time since the door slammed in my face, I didn't feel outnumbered. Now I had their own man stepping onto the stand. Ms. Hartley, the court finds the claim substantiated. The words landed heavier than I expected. Final, sharp. Like the slamming of a gavel that echoed not just in the courtroom, but through every quiet injustice Evelyn had endured and I had inherited. Judge Hayworth leaned forward. Based on authenticated evidence, including the original testament, audio recordings, and testimony from third-party witnesses, this court recognizes Camille Hartley as the legal heir to the Evelyn R. Hartley Trust and associated properties. Gasps rippled across the rows behind us. The cameras stationed in the gallery buzzed to life as reporters scrambled to type, screamed, captured. I stood still. Grant nudged me gently. That's your win, the judge continued. Furthermore, the court orders Ms. Elaine Hartley to return all assets misappropriated from the trust, including but not limited to funds transferred under the guise of funeral expenses, and any properties registered posthumously in her name. Elaine didn't move at first. Then her head dropped forward, shoulders shaking with a quiet sob. I only wanted to protect the family name, she whispered, barely audible. I almost believed her. Savannah stood beside her, rigid. No tears, no apology. The judge went on. Effective immediately, Savannah Hartley is stripped of any fiduciary power over Hartley Designs or the Evelyn Foundation. That got her attention. Her jaw clenched. She stared at the floor, not at the judge, not at me. It was Grant who filed the final document. The motion to recognize me as the legal representative of Evelyn's estate, including naming rights, foundation leadership, and property stewardship. It passed without objection. For the first time since this ordeal began, I breathed freely. The ache in my chest loosened. I glanced toward the gallery and found Doris nodding with Nathan. Nathan offered a small wave, half hopeful, half relieved. The session adjourned. I didn't move immediately. Part of me still waited for someone to yank the rug back out. I gathered my documents and turned, only to find Savannah waiting in the courtroom exit. Camille, she said, her voice tight and flat. Congratulations. You got what you wanted. I didn't respond. She stepped closer, eyes narrowed. This isn't over. Family doesn't forget. I met her gaze. Neither does justice. She didn't flinch, just walked away. Outside, the cameras closed in like bees to honey. Reporters shouted my name, thrusting microphones toward my face. Grant stepped between them and me. We'll speak when it's time, he said firmly. Back in the car, I rested my hand on a stack of folders now legally mine. The verdict was in. The inheritance had returned to its rightful place. But something in me knew. Savannah meant what she said,
Đổi.
and sometimes,
Trời này ra trời đẹp
even
nhất
when the
này,
law
nắng
is
nó
clear,
không quá.
people write their own endings. The house is quiet.
Nắng này là
For the first time, it feels like night. I stood just inside the front door, the winter light spilling through the old stained glass Evelyn insisted on preserving. My boots echoed against the newly polished hardwood, every step sending up memories from the floorboard. The way she used to come while pouring tea, how I once traced blueprint sketches on the elbow walls when I was 6. There was no applause, no dramatic music, just the kind of stillness that only follows a storm. A stack of letters sat on the intro table, official ones, from donors and old clients, from people who had watched the trial online and wrote things like, "Thank you for not staying silent," and "My grandmother loved Evelyn's work. She would have been proud." In the renovated parlor, Caleb stood in front of a new brass plaque, the Evelyn Foundation, empowering legacy through care. "They're arriving in 20, he said, adjusting the sign with practiced hands. "You didn't have to do all this," I told him. "I know," he replied, "but I wanted to." I checked my notes one last time. Evelyn's vision had always been bigger than materials. She wanted a world where no woman disappeared quietly just because she aged. The foundation would fund grants, build community centers, and offer legal aid to older women with no family or support. The kind of women Evelyn had quietly helped all women. Upstairs, her old room remained unfurnished. I kept it that way for this moment. I stepped in, breathing the faint scent of lavender and cedar. The window she used to sit by still framed the rich on the wall. I walked over and opened the curtains wide. Downstairs, people began to arrive. Neighbors, city organizers, local artists, and some of Evelyn's longtime friends. Her former secretary hugged me tightly, eyes big. She always knew. She whispered. She said you'd finish what she started. Later, after the first reception ended and the lights dimmed, I stood in the kitchen alone. A small envelope sat on the back shelf above the bread box, yellowed slightly, sealed in white. My name was written in Evelyn's handwriting. "Camille, if you're reading this," my hands trembled as I opened. "You didn't just inherit the house. You inherited the fire in this world. Don't waste time proving you belong here. You always did. Love wins, but only when it builds. Now go build something that only you could have dreamed." Outside, the wind had picked up. Snow dusted the porch rails. And inside, Evelyn's voice still lived in every corner. Not as a ghost, but as a beginning. They shut me out of the house, erased my name, and thought I'd quietly disappear. But the courtroom heard Evelyn's voice, and in the end, truth did what silence never could. It spoke, it struck, it stayed. Justice isn't something you handle. You have to build it, layer by layer, even if the first brick is plain. Like a locked safe holding forgotten blueprints, the truth waited. And when it was finally opened, it rewrote everything. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe. And comment below. 1, if you felt seen. 2, if you think justice should have gone further.